with Pete Mento and Doug Draper.
All right. Hey, I'm Doug Draper, and with me today is my friend and co-host Pete Mento. And this is Global Trade This Week. It comes to you every Monday. About this time, I'm in Denver, so it's 11 a.m. Mountain, and Pete's out there living the dream in New Hampshire, so it's 1 p.m. in the afternoon. But it doesn't matter what time it is. It's time for Global Trade This Week. And Pete, how you doing, my friend? Did you have a good weekend?
I had a great weekend. I am always tired, Doug, and I would adore 3 solid days of just sleeping. I know every time I talk to you, we were up in the mountains and we were cross-country skiing, or we were spelunking into a cavern with Nicolas Cage trying to steal the Declaration of Independence, or whatever it is. You're always on some adventure, man. Why don't you just sit down?
Well, it's driven by my wife. She loves to get out, and I just kind of roll with the punches. And happy wife is happy life, as you know, my friend. So we just rock and roll. So,
well, oddly enough, Doug, it's happy wife, happy life. Nothing rhymes with husband. So that's how that goes. Yeah.
Very true. Very true. Well, hey, Pete, before we jump into it, I wanted to thank our sponsor and the guys in the box making all this happen. It's Cap Logistics. You can visit them at caplogistics.com. They got a whole team out there that just runs the show and makes all this happen. So we always want to say thank you. Much appreciated. Got a fun show. Oh, last question, Pete. Did you get the Dickies BBQ on Friday? I got some special delivery stuff and had a phenomenal lunch. Did they make it to you? I can't.
Yeah,
what?
They must just have the Colorado address.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Oh, excuse me. All right, man. Let's get this thing started. Topic number 1, my friend. What do you got?
All right. Am I freezing up again? Is that happening already? It's early into the show.
A little bit. I think you're getting back into it, though. You froze for a second.
Okay. Well, the first topic I wanted to get into today was a discussion on an idea that keeps popping up, and it's this idea of having a regional currency for the Americas. And before everyone says that's insane, I want to remind everyone that Europe has had one currency for some time now, the euro, and of course the British have always stuck to the pound. But there has been one currency for the European Union for quite some time now, and there's been a push just to at least discuss it, to have a conversation about Canada, Mexico, and the United States adopting a single currency. There's a couple of reasons for it. The most obvious is to bring some kind of stability to the nation states of Mexico and their currency. We have to remember just how large a country we're talking about here, and how good a thing it would be to bring some stability to the peso, or the people that are living in Mexico under that currency, as well as what would be a quickly emerging, very large block of petro countries, Canada, Mexico, and the United States, exporting all of this oil. That's a big reason for it. Now, why wouldn't we want to? Why would you want to connect the United States to Canada and Mexico, given the volatility to their economies? And, why would we not want to give up our sovereignty that way? So another reason for doing it is that people think it would be a great way to allow a lot more of these Latin American countries who over time we still want to bring into NAFTA, make it more of an AFTA, America's Free Trade Agreement. Now that we have the USMCA, try to find ways to bring more and more Central and South American and Caribbean economies into this trading bloc, and try to trade under one currency, which for people who hate when I talk about the Bitcoin, would be just another reason to buy things like Bitcoin, to fight against and rage against the machine of these national currencies. I can hear Keenan back in Colorado right now, just against the wall as I talk like that. So that's the first topic I wanted to discuss today. I don't know, Doug, how do you feel about it as I continue to lock up on the left-hand side of the screen?
Yeah, well, a couple things. One, when you shot that over, I was like, isn't that kind of what Bitcoin is trying to do? But I'm going to put that into a box, right? Because we've talked to Bitcoin enough and I know how you feel about it. But I was like, okay, isn't that kind of what the concept is behind the people's currency? But I think a couple things that pop up in my mind, Pete. One, it's going to reduce the risk of trade when you have, a shared currency. And I think it'd be good for kind of plan B sourcing. We've talked a lot about the international trade and the craziness with the supply chain and how things are delayed. And we've talked about that a handful of times. But I think it would be a good opportunity to say, hey, why don't you look at plan B sourcing, whether that's Mexico, Central America, South America. And then, the transactional cost to some degree. I mean, you have to convert pesos to dollars and everything else. So I think that, albeit somewhat minimal, will help. But here's the biggest one. You'd mentioned the euro. To have a unified currency, there needs to be a governing body, right? And the governing body is going to have a whole hell of a lot of power over a very large geographic area of the world. And that, of all of those things, probably gives me the most pause, is you're empowering one body, wherever that is, who it is, how they control and manage and manipulate. So that would be my take on that. So I don't have a pro or a con or a for or against. Those are just my comments.
Yeah, I think that those are well placed. One of the big problems with this unified currency is the lack of a unified government. And I agree. How can you have monetary policy with such diverse governments? All right, Doug, hit me with your best shot. You got a fun one for the first topic.
Yes. And, it kind of popped up just over the weekend. I was thinking about different topics, but this one kind of goes back to the box club that we had talked about in the past related to the ocean carrier industry and how they're kind of their own animal. And I think I equated it to the mafia, which may not have been the best analogy, but I'm going to roll with it, right? So we'll do that. But my point is that you're going to see a lot of releases with big steamship lines just crushing it with revenue gains and EBITDA that's coming out. I think I'm going to look down here at some numbers, but Hapag-Lloyd, Maersk, HMM, here's some quotes: $1 billion turnaround, EBITDA up $900 million over 2019, 48% increase. So basically, during this pandemic and everything else, the steamship lines are crushing it. They are doing a good job. And you know what? They're not really apologizing for it. And I don't know why we would think they would. I think that's just part of it. I think that they've, in the little research I did this morning, it's like, hey, we need to be positioned in the future. We need to be around in 3 to 5 years. We kind of got hit hard in the last 10 years. Sustainability is a big topic. We need to have investments. So there wasn't a whole lot of apology or backpedaling or justification other than, hey, it's our time. And, Pete, the question that we've asked before is like, what are we going to do about it? Nothing. There's going to be people that raise their hand and say it's unfair and some inquisition or investigation needs to happen. But at the end of the day, we're still going to buy stuff. And it's probably still the cheapest option to move it on ocean freight if you look statistically. And there we are. So, check the box on the K curve. And on the top half of that bad boy is the ocean carriers, because as it says right down below, they're crushing it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not like it's not like they're like Deion Sanders and Andre Rison, walking around with, the cash money in the background, making it rain and driving their Lambos around. They're definitely not rubbing it in our faces from that sense of it, but they're rubbing it in our faces with regards to the fees and the prices. And I guess they had to hit rock bottom, and they had to have a pandemic in order to create some sort of a reset. And now that they've done it, they've got their hands firmly around this machine, and they're going to continue to do that until they can get back to turn this thing into the profitable, well-oiled, incredibly well-controlled cartel that, let's be honest, it is.
Yeah. Yep, I would agree with that. So we usually do a halftime here, Pete. Tell me about, give me something good we can chitter chatter. I just said I had a great lunch on Friday with the Dickies BBQ. Sorry you couldn't participate, but give me the lowdown. What else is new in your world, my friend?
Well, diet update, down 60 pounds in 8 weeks through just starvation. And, everyone's like, what's your secret? It's just brutal starvation and self-deprecation, working out and really just being miserable. So for those of you who are out there who are like, why can't I make a diet work for me? You need to ask yourself, am I miserable and really just unhappy enough with where I'm at with my diet? Because if you're not, that's probably why. Because I'll tell you, I'm really unhappy and miserable with my diet, and I think that's why this has been so effective. And then, aside from that, just really watching very closely what's going on globally. I didn't talk about the whole Khashoggi thing this week with regards to the sanctions with Saudi Arabia, but we're beginning to see a lot more in the news with this particular administration and their use of sanctions. And we'll probably talk about this next week, but I spent a lot of time this weekend combing the international news cycles, trying to find out more about if the U.S. is the only country who's going to pick up the wiffle ball bat and smack back at Saudi Arabia. It looks like we might be. But, in any case, that's kind of what I've been focusing on. I don't know, Doug, you appear to be the moose whisperer, given what happened to you again this weekend.
Yeah. Cross country skiing, saw number 4 moose when we were out there. We must ski in a moose den or whatever. But so here's something else. We were leaving to go out to dinner. We're leaving a condo I was staying at, right? Not mine. We were renting it, but we drove by. It's about 6:00. Here's this kid standing at a bus station. He's got his skis and his helmet, and he's looking down at a piece of paper. And I drove by, and I'm like, that dude is lost. He has no idea where he is. He's not on the right bus route. So anyway, we pulled him over and said, get in the car. We need to give you a ride. Where are you going? Anyway, so that was the good deed. And on his way down, he said that he's recently become a Buddhist, and he really appreciates everything because he was going to sit at that bus stop until the bus came. And he said he was just going to, think good thoughts. And we couldn't let him sit there. I mean, literally, he would have sat until 6 a.m. If we hadn't picked him up. So there's the good deed. We saw some moose, and I had a good deed of the weekend, my friend. So there you go.
Well, apparently it worked, Doug. Apparently thinking good thoughts worked for him because he got you and kindly Mrs. Draper to pull over and pick him up. So, all of my cynicism and sarcasm needs to melt away because him being kind in his mind worked out. So, I hope that all that legal Denver weed is doing everyone well there at Rocky Mountain High.
Yes. Yeah. Well, now that the weekend halftime show's over here at the Super Bowl, let's jump back into it. I know that we have 4 topics. We've covered 2. Pete, what do you got for number 3?
Yeah. Anytime that you've got most of the major nations in the world really fiddling with monetary policy because of a pandemic, one of the big fears that you're going to see on all of the major indices and all of the big stock exchanges is going to be inflation. And that was definitely the case last week here in the United States. A lot of the traders around the country, if not the world, were beginning to worry about the US dollar and inflation. We have a $1.9 trillion pandemic bill that appears that it's going to be on the president's desk and it will get signed. You have a lot of other countries who are looking at even more money being thrown at trying to kickstart this economy. And with that, you pump a lot more cash into the marketplace. The value of that money is supposedly going to be less. There's been a lot of talk by economists around the world that because of the interconnectivity globally of our economies, that inflation does not have the same impact that it would have had when economies were more protectionist. Economies of the 70s, early 80s, when much more of what we bought was bought locally. So that, yes, that dollar was buying more things locally where the value of that currency could be affected. But now that we were buying things for the most part that are inexpensive and overseas to begin with. What really effect is that inflation going to have? And is it going to be, is it going to end up being diluted across all these countries that are associated with it? The thing is, we're probably about to find out. So the pandemic has allowed us to learn so much and given us so many opportunities to observe economic impacts. And this is going to be another one. While most of the G8 is engaged in significant monetary manipulation, and we're probably going to see effects of inflation, we're going to find out pretty darn quick just what kind of inflation we can expect in these markets. We're seeing it in some places already, but honestly, not so much that it's been affecting spending, that it's been affecting the lifestyles and comforts of Western societies. And I haven't really seen it in our industry yet. I don't know if you have.
Yeah, I think when I saw this one a few minutes ago when we were talking, my initial thought was, hasn't it always been inflation tied to global movements and a global economy to some degree? You know, you got the trade negotiations to help control it. You know, it's on the local buying. You know, the inflation is, this is my perspective, is local, right? So what I do here on the local is really what I'm focused on. So how do I get cheaper goods into my hands? I negotiate a trade deal. I align with other people, like you said, the G8 and things of that nature. So I think it's always been there. I just don't know how it's going to come out in 2020, but that's kind of my take. And again, you know, kind of to the box club analogy, you know, whoever has the power is going to control it. So I think what that means is you're going to have more or less and less people controlling more and more with sanctions and global trade agreements. So I think it's always been there a little bit. And I think the few are going to control the masses as the inflation comes. But you made a comment, you said, we'll find out. So what is going to happen that we'll find out related to inflation here in 2021?
You're going to have more and more people getting employed. The vaccine rollout, I don't think that anyone expected all of these companies to produce these vaccines as fast as they are. You have Moderna talking about producing 60 million vaccines. You know, you've got the Johnson & Johnson one just approved. We have at least one more American company who intends to have a vaccine rollout in the course of the next few months. We will have exports, massive global exports of vaccines around the world, which should, in short order, have people returning to a more social economy. And with that, people returning to jobs. So you're going to have the effect of people working and having consumer confidence, along with the fact that in a very short-term period of time, we flooded the market with excess stimulus. And those two things with each other is just, it's a tidal wave of spending and consumer confidence. So, you know, we'll find out pretty quick. But you're absolutely right when you say the larger countries will probably have more means of manipulation. In the words of Mr. Stalin, the strong do what they will and the weak accept what they must. So there will be definitely be a haves and have-nots at the end of this. And as with everything, there'll be a trailing end of this where they will deal with the detritus and the wake of the decisions that we make around the world. That's just how it is. But in the end, you know, in the 80s and the 70s, China had to deal with this. At this point, it'll be China's decisions the rest of the world will be dealing with, and that's a new position for them to be in. All right, well, it's time for our fourth and final topic, Doug. You've got another one that has to do with money, money, money. So let's hear it.
That's right. Well, as we said on the show, we deal with some international trade, some economics, and transportation. So we've checked the box on the first three, or the first two. Now we're going to go into transportation. But you're right. I think this one, the Jerry Maguire "Show me the money" comment is spot on here, and I'm referring to the storm that took place. This is real specific on this one. The storm that took place in Dallas on like the 11th of February, right? Generational situation, ice storms, coldest in record history, you know, all these things related to uncontrollable and unforeseeable situations that we can't control. But you know what's popped out of it is money hungry lawyers going after trucking companies that were involved in that massive 100-car pileup on the highway in Dallas-Fort Worth. I just heard that there's 5 lawsuits that are going out against trucking companies, and they're big names that you would recognize because they have a perception of big pocketbooks. And it's just another example of, I can't even think of the right words on this one, Pete. It's just absolutely disappointing that there's lawyers out there that are chasing emotion and chasing opportunity to make a quick buck. I mean, I don't understand how any judge or any person that walks through that process and understands what happened could justify or allow any type of lawsuits to come out of a situation like that where it was a weather event, and not only a weather event, but one in a generation, once in 100-year type of weather event. So it's just another example of, the trucking industry really getting hammered and people taking advantage of the situation. And I'm incredibly disappointed and kind of frustrated. I'm like, when is this going to stop? Right? It's unbelievable. There's fraud where people are going in to set up accidents so they can make a quick buck. And now they're talking about a weather event to take advantage of trucking companies. It's disheartening, my man. It's frustrating.
I run my own business. I have my own business. And when I worked for other corporations and I had to send a contract to legal, my whole day was ruined. And when you're a salesman and you've got a client that's like, yeah, I want to sign this. And they give you a bunch of strikeouts to a contract, you get a contract and you're like, I got to send it to legal. It's like, your head would fall and it would go to the general counsel and you just know, or I'll probably see his commission next year, but now because I'm just so used to somebody messing with me or somebody not wanting to pay me, or it's at the point now where in the reality of a litigious society, I just expect someone's going to try to stick it to me. And am I surprised? No. I've had ex-girlfriends sue me, dude. Like I'm not surprised at all, right? I remembered the stories of people suing McDonald's because their coffee burned them. I remember, all these ridiculous lawsuits that people eventually either settle out of court because they've annoyed someone long enough, or whatever the case may be. It's mad. It's madness. So am I shocked that in a car pileup in Texas during a storm that probably nobody should have been on the road to begin with, that some attorney got up on and called everyone they possibly could and said, we should probably take these people to court? No. But I also know that these insurance companies that you paid are going to try to limit what they've got to pay people out, and they have attorneys on staff. And man, that's why whenever we go overseas and we deal with international companies, they're worried about getting into contracts with Americans because they know that we're a litigious society. So I'm not shocked at all. And I'm not an attorney. I don't pretend to be. And I can't imagine what it's going to take to change this. Maybe we should have a guest on sometime to talk about what it's going to take to change that whole area from a regulatory standpoint, because it really does get in the way of rates. It gets in the way of, liability. It gets in the way of these truck drivers and them making money. It gets in the way of people wanting to do that kind of job and get into that sort of a business. And it's really hamstringing their ability to make.
Yeah, the unintended consequences of what somebody's looking for a fast buck, and they're going to pull, they meaning the lawyers, the process is going to pull on the emotion, and emotion is going to drive a big verdict. And it's just frustrating and disappointing. Like you said, there's not a whole lot we can do to stop it. It's going to happen. We'll have to mitigate it through the insurance companies. Rates go up. It's just all the things you spoke about. So there you go. That's my second one, my friend.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for another wonderful week. I have a feeling that whatever you do this weekend, you could go grocery shopping, and in the parking lot, you're going to run into a family of moose. And if that's the case, we'll be here next week on Global Trade This Week, brought to you by our good friends at Cap Logistics, and Doug is going to tell you all about it. So I thank you, as always, my friend, for bringing some great topics, and thank all of you for joining us. And, thank you to all of our teenagers back in the booth for producing it. But again, thanks to Cap Logistics for giving us an opportunity to bring these stories to you about what we think is going to happen. As always, you can catch Doug on Uptime Logistics and me on the TradeGeek podcast. See you next week. Thanks, Doug.
Well done, Pete.